Imagine holding a plate. A simple, porcelain dish. Smooth to the touch, cold to the skin. It's light, fragile, and utterly replaceable. Now imagine that its value is not measured in currency, but in your own life. Around the middle of the 17th century, in Edo, Japan, this was no metaphor. It was a death sentence. Her name was Okiku. She was a servant in a high-ranking samurai manor. One night, one of 10 priceless heirloom plates went missing. For that single error, she was accused of theft, dragged to the estate's deep, dark well, and executed. But the story didn't end with her body hitting the water. Legend says that night, a voice began to rise from the depths. A thin, chilling whisper, echoing through the halls of the manor. 1, 2, 3. The count is rhythmic, unrelenting. It echoes through the centuries, into the modern Japanese psyche. Why would a spirit stay trapped in an endless cycle of failure? Why focus on a missing piece of ceramic when your soul is lost in the darkness of a well? This is the legend of Bancho Sarayashiki. It is Japan's most haunting ghost story, but it is also a mirror. Beneath the terror of the counting ghost lies a cold, historical truth about a society where human worth was defined by perfection, and where a single mistake could cost you everything. This is the anatomy of a haunting, and it begins with the count. Okiku's world was a calculation of 10. Every plate, every cup, every bowl, it was a performance of absolute order. She knew the weight of every dish, the texture of the glaze, the precise placement on the shelf. In the Aoyama manor, a single mistake wasn't just an accident, it was a rupture in reality. Then the rhythm broke. She counted once. 9. Her breath hitched. The air in the dim, wooden storehouse felt suddenly thin. She counted again, her fingers trembling, tracing the cold, smooth porcelain. 1, 2, 3, 9. The 10th plate was gone. Panic, cold and sharp, began to bloom in her chest. She tore through the manor, overturning straw mats, searching every corner, every shadow, every dark crevice. She wasn't just searching for a lost object, she was searching for her life. She caught the eyes of the other servants. They didn't help. They didn't even speak. They stood like statues, watching with a detached, chilling silence. They knew what happened to those who lost things that belonged to a master. In this house, empathy was a weakness that could get you killed, and they were all too busy protecting their own necks to offer a hand. Every tick of the clock felt like a heartbeat closer to her end. She whispered prayers. She begged the empty air. She cursed her own incompetence. But the 10th plate remained invisible, and as the sun began to set, casting long, skeletal shadows across the courtyard, she knew. She wasn't just counting plates anymore. She was counting down the remaining minutes of her existence. When the master, Aoyama Harima, arrived, the silence in the room became absolute. He didn't ask how the plate vanished. He didn't care about the truth or the potential for theft by others. He only saw the broken rhythm of his own status. His judgment was swift, his expression as cold and blank as a stone. They dragged her across the garden. The gravel bit into her feet, but she barely felt it. She felt only the crushing grip of the guards and the looming dark mouth of the estate's well. She looked at Harima, searching for a flicker of mercy, a hint of human hesitation, but he was already looking past her, his mind occupied with the inventory of his household. To him, she was not a person. She was a broken tool, being discarded. She was pushed. As she plummeted into the black, stagnant water, the last thing she heard was the heavy, final thud of the wooden lid being slammed shut above her. But the silence didn't last. That night, as the moon climbed over the rooftops of Edo, a sound emerged from the depths. It was wet, hollow, and impossibly thin. 1, 2, 3. The servants, trembling in their quarters, pressed their hands over their ears. The counting continued, night after night, crawling up from the darkness to infiltrate their dreams. 7, 8, 9. And then the rhythm shattered. The calm, measured voice erupted into a blood-curdling, discordant scream, a sound of pure, raw agony before the voice collapsed, breathless, back to the beginning. 1, 2, 3. The haunting had begun. The Aoyama manor was no longer a house of honor, it was a vessel for a failure that refused to be forgotten. The counting wasn't just a sound anymore, it was a stain on the sanity of everyone who lived within those walls. Imagine standing in that courtyard at dusk. Stone lanterns flicker to life, stretching long shadows across the gravel. Okiku is being dragged toward the well. You are another servant, watching from the edge of the garden. Every instinct tells you to help, but your body refuses to move. A servant lowers his eyes. He studies the cracks in the stone as though they were the most important thing in the world. If he doesn't see, he didn't witness. If he didn't witness, he can't be held responsible. No one steps forward, not because they lack compassion, because compassion itself has become dangerous. This was life inside a Hatamoto estate. Fear kept perfect order. A single mistake wasn't merely an error, it threatened the honor of the entire household. Later that night, two servants sit in silence over a cup of cold tea. Did you see what happened? The other freezes before whispering. See what? A long pause. Tomorrow the master will expect breakfast at sunrise. Another pause, and if I'm the one who breaks a bowl, his voice trails away. I'd rather be invisible. Perhaps that's why the legend endured. Not because everyone believed a ghost haunted the well, but because everyone recognized the world that created her. The master walks past the well. He never looks down. He slides open the door to his study, grinds the inkstone, dips his brush, and calmly records the day's events. The paper receives every detail. The weather, the household, the inventory, but not a single line mentions Okiku. As far as history is concerned, she never existed. Years pass. The servants change. The master grows old. Children are born who never knew Okiku's name. Yet on certain nights, when the wind is still and the moon disappears behind the clouds, a voice drifts upward from the darkness. 1, 2, 3. By morning, no one speaks about it. No one has to. The scream never stayed inside the Aoyama manor. It escaped the walls. It passed from whispered conversation to whispered conversation, until everyone in Edo seemed to know the sound. A young mother walks home through a narrow alley after sunset. A paper lantern sways gently in the wind. Her son suddenly stops. Mother. He points toward an old well, half hidden beneath tangled weeds. What happened there? She doesn't answer. She simply takes his hand, pulls him closer, and whispers, if you ever hear someone counting, keep walking. She never explains why. She doesn't have to. The story spread across Japan, changing a little with every retelling. On the kabuki stage, audiences watched Okiku appear with her hair hanging loose, endlessly searching for the missing plate. Night after night, the same story unfolded. The counting, the scream, the silence. People didn't come only to be frightened. They came because the story felt familiar. Years later, a traveler stops at a small roadside inn not far from the old estate. He notices that everyone inside keeps glancing toward the dark hills outside. Is it true? He asks quietly. The well. The innkeeper continues polishing a wooden cup. Without looking up, he answers. They say she's still working. The traveler frowns. Working? The old man nods once. Still looking for the 10th plate. No one laughs. No one changes the subject. The room simply falls silent. Then one autumn night, a wandering monk arrives. He carries nothing but a wooden staff and an empty begging bowl. Ignoring every warning, he walks alone toward the abandoned well. The wind fades. Even the insects fall silent. From somewhere below, a voice begins to rise. 1, 2, 3. The counting grows faster. Desperate. Almost breathless. 7, 8, 9. The scream is about to come. Instead, the monk steps forward. His voice is calm, certain. 10. The night freezes. The wind returns. The leaves begin to move again, and the counting stops. Some say Okiku finally found peace. Others believe she is still waiting beneath the water. But perhaps that was never the important part. The ghost may have disappeared. The fear never did. Why does this story, born in the shadows of the 17th century, still refuse to disappear? Perhaps it was never really about a ghost. Imagine hearing that counting every night. Not because you believe someone is trapped beneath the water, but because, deep down, you know that one day, it could be your turn to stand at the edge of the well. Okiku wasn't haunted by the well. She was haunted by a standard no human being could ever satisfy. Inside the Aoyama manor, she was never allowed to simply exist. She had value only as long as she remained useful. The missing plate wasn't the true tragedy. The tragedy was that everyone around her believed the plate mattered more than the person holding it. Centuries have passed. The well has fallen silent. But the counting never really stopped. Today, we count different things. Deadlines, promotions, followers, performance reviews, productivity, different plates, the same fear. We tell ourselves that one more achievement will finally prove our worth. One more promotion, one more perfect performance, one more success. But there is always another plate to count. Perhaps that is why Okiku still feels so familiar. Not because we fear the ghost beneath the well, but because we recognize the voice that keeps whispering. Count again, and again, and again, until we forget that we were never meant to be an inventory in the first place. The legend of the Bancho well is not a ghost story. It is a mirror. It reminds us that no amount of counting will ever fill the void left by a life sacrificed for a system. We look back at the Edo period and see a world obsessed with order, yet we live in an age that demands even more relentless performance. We quantify our worth through metrics, data, and the invisible tally of our successes. Like Okiku, we fear the 9 that threshold where our control slips and we believe we are about to fail. But the legend leaves us with a final, somber truth. The true cost of perfection is the humanity we lose along the way. The ghost of Okiku does not continue to count because she is evil. She counts because she was never given the grace to be anything other than a function. As we close this well, let it be a warning. If we continue to measure our lives by the inventory of our achievements, we, too, will find ourselves trapped in the cycle. We are all constantly counting our own plates. But the true act of liberation is not in reaching the 10th count. It is in the realization that the plates were never worth the price of the person holding them. The well is deep, the count is endless, and the only way to escape the cycle is to stop counting altogether.